Okay, I think this is part 7. And thus begins a collection of side stories labeled as the beginning of a winter apart. And I don't know if this is going to end up making me cry. I don't know. But we'll see. Irreplaceable. My office was filled with the scratching of pens and the hushed murmurs of my retainers checking each other's work. Ehrenfest, if you would sign this. Okay, this is from Sylvester's point of view. I accepted the document from the scholar, looked it over, and then sighed. Everything was business as usual, but without Ferdinand to help me, I was having to deal with more work than ever. It was suffocating, and it didn't help that my retainers all glared at me the instant I tried to rest. I was pretty much under watch at all times now. If you would check over this, Ehrenfest, said another scholar who had entered the room. He was holding out a petition from McGee. Oh, give that to... I trailed off, remembering that Ferdinand was no longer here for me to depend on. Yeah, you're gonna have to do your work yourself. You can't drop it on him anymore. That's the one good thing of this whole thing, besides possibly getting information on Ahrensbach, is Sylvester can no longer mooch off of Ferdinand. He had departed several days ago, and my habit of trying to delegate work to him had yet to fade. It was a disappointing truth, and one that preyed on my mind as I started going through the documents myself. In the past, petitions from Gibbs and other less important requests had all gone straight to Ferdinand. Now, what to do? This is what happens when you delegate work. You're not able to understand what you're supposed to be doing, because the other person would do it. Petitions from Gibbs often contained important requests that only the Archduke could review, as well as some minor ones that I would only need to glance over. In this case, I simply needed to hand the matter over to the scholar in charge, but having to personally check each document was a waste of time. I needed someone who could manage all the minor requests themselves. It had also been standard for Ferdinand to help me with my archducal work. I was fine with doing all that myself, since it was mine to begin with. But something had to be done about the archducal family work that he had previously been in charge of. His move to Ahrensbach had created a massive hole we had yet to fill. I decided to send an ordonnance to one of the scholars in my uncle's office. Is Bonifacius there? I could use his help. Bonifacius was old enough to have retired already, but even now he was assisting us with archducal family work. But that was more like during the Archduke conference, essentially. Moving forward, he would even be helping to educate the Archduke candidates. I assumed that he just wanted an excuse to spend more time with his granddaughter, Rosamine, but Ehrenfest had so few adult Archducal family members that his help was greatly appreciated. Lord Bonifacius is not here, came the response from a bemused-sounding scholar. He's at the training grounds. It seems that he intends to train the apprentice knights until Lady Rosamine leaves for the Royal Academy. Bonifacius had received untold amounts of praise from Rosamine for improving the apprentice's coordination in time for last year's dinner games, and now he was fixated on getting even more after the next introductory tournament. Our plan was to lead the work to Lord Ferdinand while we attended the introductory tournament this year, but that will no longer do, the scholar continued. At the very least, it will not be a fair trade unless Lady Rosamine still gives her praise. Not to mention, there will not be anyone around to stop Lord Bonifacius' brutal training sessions while the Knight Commander and the others are in meetings. Will you stop him, Ehrenfest? I knew how much Bonifacius wanted to spend the introductory tournament with Rosamine, and the last thing I wanted to do was go to the training grounds while he was taking out his frustration on the knights. I also recognized that the scholar had mentioned the Knight Commander and the others being in meetings. Bonifacius was no doubt distracting the knights to keep information about the purge hidden. Of course. He'll refuse to do administrative work, and I don't want him coming here to complain. Tell him to keep training the knights until he's satisfied, I replied, taking care not to sound unnaturally harsh. There were still too many people close to me who couldn't find out about the purge. No amount of caution was excessive. The purge had also been among Ferdinand's countless duties in Ehrenfest, since he was distanced from the former Veronica faction and had therefore been best suited to keeping things hidden from them. Carson had since been put in charge, but he was having a heck of a hard time keeping things in order. Now that Ferdinand was gone, there were gaps everywhere that we were struggling to fill, and every time I stumbled upon a new one, I realized just how far my half-brother's influence had reached. If we cannot delegate to Lord Bonifacius, then what shall we do with this? The scholar asked. I think I'll give it to Wilfrid, I said, then send an ordonnance to my son, the future Archduke. I noted that I wanted to trust him with a new job, and he happily came running. Sorry to have called you away from your studies, I said. It's fine, Father. I finished studying for my written lessons, and anything to do with the printing industry can be caved into Charlotte, he replied. Clearly excited. My responsibilities as the next Archduke are far more important. I had to fight back the urge to smile. He really was just like me. I remember when my father had entrusted me with new work, and how much I had loved the feeling of at least being treated like an adult. I enjoyed receiving new things to do, but that was because the unknown was so stimulating and exciting. Once it became a regular part of my everyday life, I would swiftly lose interest. You got ADHD, dude. Either way, it's good he's motivated. Well, then again, I could be wrong about the whole ADD thing. Though it just seems like it, like his personality, essentially. Wilfred got bored his lease, so the plan was to give him something new to do whenever he started to lose interest in his current task. It was a bit early for him to be doing this kind of work, but I was hoping that entrusting him with the duties of an Archduke would benefit his studies. Plus, you never know when death might come. I had inherited the role of Ehrenfest from my father much earlier than expected, and there hadn't been a single Archduke younger than me during my first Archduke conference. The usual handover process hadn't even been completed, so Bonifacius had needed to support me while teaching me my duties. But what would happen if I died at the same age as Father? Bonifacius was old enough that he could pass away any day now, and while the original plan had been for Ferdinand to take up a supportive role after my unexpected demise, that was no longer an option. Would it be possible for Ehrenfest to pass all of our duties for Florencia to pass all of our duties to Wilfried and Rosamund on her own? She carried out her own duties as a first wife, but she wasn't involved in archducal work, so there was a lot she would struggle with. Considering the long term, it definitely seemed wise to give Wilfried an overview of everything that would one day be expected of him. Father, what do you want me to do? We've received petitions from Gibbs. Get the scholars here to provide responses, I said, handing him the documents in question. His retainers were accompanying him, and they probably wouldn't let him send any incorrect or mistaken answers. After accepting the document with a satisfied grin, Wilfried exited my office with his retainers. Ferdinand never smiled like that when I gave him new jobs. He doesn't have a cute boner in his body. It's Ferdinand, dude. What do you expect? My half-brother, who was younger than me by 5 years, had always been shockingly good at hiding his emotions, even at a young age. I closed my eyes and thought back to the first time we had met. Ooh, we get some backstory! Father had announced that I was soon going to have a little brother. Mother didn't seem too pleased about it, but my other siblings were all girls and older than me, so I was over the moon. My mind raced with the thoughts of what I could do as an older brother, and in my excitement I asked Karstead and Riarda for their input. At this rate, he might not respect you at all, Riarda warned, so I started doing my best to be a good older brother. I resolved to be nothing like Georgine, who had treated my sister and me so harshly, and to instead take good care of our new addition to the family. Sylvester, this is Ferdinand, Father said, introducing my new half-brother. He's going to join you in the northern building, and one day he'll become your pillar of support. Get along now. The boy in front of me had light blue hair, cropped at the shoulders, and almost feminine features. He was so pretty, in fact, that I might have mistaken him for a girl in different clothes. Wow! Ferdinand gave the greeting he had been taught without so much as a smile. He was nervous, I thought, so I decided to start dragging him all over the place in an attempt to make him feel more at ease. Of course, it wouldn't be until much later that I realized his stoic expression was a sign not of anxiety, but of cautiousness. Lord Sylvester is way too formal, I said. We're siblings now, so just call me brother. Grow your hair out, I insisted. Then we'll match. I'll help you with your studies, I offered. How about some Harspiel practice? Slowly but surely, Ferdinand started to seem less tense. But Mother never stopped ignoring his existence entirely. I didn't understand why she refused to even try to spend time with him. I wonder how long it was before I realized that she was trying to eliminate him, that she was doing all those terrible things to him without Father's and my knowing. Riarda and Karstead had saved Ferdinand on more than one occasion after the truth came to light. Father and I had likewise told Mother to stop, but that had only made her more stubborn and her abuse even crueler. Why do you do these things, Mother? I once exclaimed. That child is a threat to you, she replied. He must be eliminated sooner rather than later. You are the only male Archduke candidate we need, Sylvester. That's not really the case, because, dude, this is the whole thing with Arensbach, because they had a male heir. They thought they were going to have him be the Archduke, but he died. What are you going to do if something happens to Sylvester that's not even Ferdinand's fault? Like, for example, sickness. Or not sickness. Actually, that could be construed as being poison, but still. What happens if he goes out in the forest and gets killed by a fey beast or something. You know? You get what I'm saying. Something can happen that's beyond Ferdinand's control. What are you going to do then? What you going to do then? You don't have an archduke candidate. She had refused to listen, so Father and I eventually decided to do everything in our power to keep her and Ferdinand apart. The situation then changed when Ferdinand became a third year. Even though he had already obtained such high grades, he had asked to stay at the Royal Academy outside of winter so that he could take the knight and scholar courses too. Mother had refused this, so this would have required them to not only keep the dormitory open for his sake, but also ensure there were servants and retainers there to attend to him. Mother continued to protest, but Father granted Ferdinand his wish nonetheless. His greatest priority was to keep the two away from each other. Thus, Ferdinand started spending the bulk of each year at the Royal Academy, returning to Ehrenfest only when Father determined that he should. I started seeing him a lot less after that. But the few times we did meet, he always seemed so full of life. I was just glad things were working out. I had assumed that Ferdinand was safe in the Royal Academy and that I only needed to keep an eye on Mother whenever he returned to Ehrenfest. It had never even crossed my mind that he might be suffering in the dormitory, and that even our duchy's dormitory supervisor might be treated poorly along with him. Then, as my marriage to Florencia came nearer and nearer, I started focusing less and less on my brother's feud with Mother, and once I was married, my attention turned to keeping Mother from interfering with my new life. Only the first few years of my marriage were spent in bliss. We had assumed that Father's poor health was due to a common illness that would soon pass, but as time marched on, he had only grown weaker, and as he became more unwell, more of his work was thrust upon me. My hands were full before I knew it. I hadn't thought that there was anything unusual about Ferdinand helping me with my workload on the few occasions he came home. He was coming first in class every year, being probed about marrying someone from Dunkelfelger, a greater duchy, and spending all his time immersed in magic research. As far as I was concerned, he was having a blast doing whatever he wanted. Everything was turned on its head when Father died. Ferdinand's eagerness fell through, although I hadn't known at the time, and Mother's obsession with eliminating him became almost psychotic. I was worried, but not necessarily for Ferdinand. He was talented enough to have consistently come first in class. He needed only to fight back, and Mother would meet her end. But I can't risk losing either of them. I cared about Ferdinand, but both because he was my brother and because I had promised Father that I would protect Ehrenfest alongside him. And it was for that reason that I suggested he enter the temple. Cutting off my mother simply wasn't an option, in part because she was my family by blood, and in part because she was my strongest source of support now that Father was gone. My mother had lost her own mother at a young age, as well as her older brother. She had also had a very strained relationship with her father, considering that he cared far more about his lies-gang wife than he had about her. Mother had reviled the second wife of her father and half-siblings alike, choosing to maintain contact only with her younger brother who had been sent to the temple. Most other nobles wouldn't have spared my uncle so much as a glance, but she had cared for him deeply, and for Wilfrid and me as well. In contrast, her loathing for Ferdinand, who did not share her blood, was abnormally strong. Unfortunately, even after Ferdinand had entered the temple and stopped associating with its noble society, Mother had continued to pursue him in a maddening frenzy. Dude, she needs to quit, considering he entered the temple and left noble society. He is not a threat at this point. Does she not realize that, hello, he's in the temple, he's not bothering anybody, leave him alone? I don't even think she would stop even if she did get rid of Ferdinand. She'd probably just focus her attention on something else. The chaos had come to a head when she had committed a crime that could be excused, and now she was detained in the ivory tower while Ferdinand was back in noble society. Your expression is getting darker by the day, Sylvester, Florencia said, sounding concerned as I climbed into bed. I sent my retainers away, and only then did I feel as though I could breathe easily. Florencia gently stroked my forehead. Do you not think Lord Ferdinand will be displeased to hear that you are still bemoaning his departure, she asked. Of course he's freaking... What do you think Rosemine is doing right now? Probably doing the same dang thing. Her indigo eyes tinged with worry as she tenderly ran her fingertips across my cheek. He left to protect both you and Ehrenfest, no? To protect Ehrenfest, huh? My eyes started heating up. I really had thought that Ferdinand would stay by my side forever. Thanks to his promise with Father, I tried giving him a place here by dragging him all over and relying on him for things. But in the end, I couldn't do as well as Rosemine. I was glad that Rosemine existed, and adopting her had been a genius move. It had been great knowing that Ferdinand had someone to care about in the temple, and it had been fascinating to see how extensively he had cared for her despite complaining about what a pain it was. Most of all, I was pleased that Rosamund had managed to get through to Ferdinand using her commoner ways. She had gotten him to reveal things that he had kept hidden away even from me. If not for her, I wouldn't have known exactly what Mother had done, that Ferdinand had been struggling beneath his steely exterior, or that Wilfrid had been in a truly dangerous spot. That reminds me, Rosamund's taking this just as hard as I am, apparently. Rosamund was especially worn down according to a report from Yarda. The news hadn't come as much of a surprise. She had trusted Ferdinand more than anyone else in noble society, and he had protected her countless times and in countless ways. She was probably suffering even more than I was. Rosamund must be feeling empty inside too. She needs a hug. Someone go give her a hug. Sylvester, go give her a hug. You seem like the type who would give out hugs. He just seems like the type who would give out a hug just to see you smile. I imagine he would have pulled that one on Ferdinand when he first came to the castle. Oh my god, that would have been awkward. You're gone now, Ferdinand, and you've left us all feeling so hollow, I muttered, trying to vent my misdirected anger. There we go! Florencia gives a hug! Come on! Florencia, go give Rosamund a hug! Florencia pulled me into a tight hug and lovingly rubbed my back. It's not over yet, dear. You must grow strong enough to contain Lady Georgine. Turn that frustration into mana to use. I will be here at your side. I'll do it tomorrow, I said, taking comfort in her warmth and drifting off to sleep. Oh boy, here we go with Ferdinand. Starting life in Ahrensbach. We were now in Ahrensbach, and winter socializing was around the corner. There was a problem, though. Ahrensbach had died just before we arrived. Oh, come on! Really? Really? He could... Georgine, what did you do to him? Dude, what did you do? I assume she poisoned her own dang daughter to get her to so they could go to have an excuse to go to Geeb Gerlach's house. But, dude, are you serious? I'm assuming she did the same thing to her own husband just so she could have the seat of Ob. Temporarily. Seriously. The Archduke had apparently been in a shockingly dangerous state when he had sent his letter to Ehrenfest, and his true intention had been to have Lord Ferdinand here to fill the void left by his passing. Ahrensbach's death meant that our original plan of using him to form connections with the duchy's nobles was no longer an option. We were fortunate beyond words that Lord Ferdinand had formed a bond with Lady Letzia and her retainers on the way here. Okay, so this is probably from either Eckhart or Justice's point of view. The unfortunate circumstances had meant that Lady Detlinde was much too busy to welcome Ferdinand upon his arrival at the border gate. Lady Georgine had been sent instead, given her relation to Ehrenfest, but her grief over losing her husband was apparently so great that she had fallen ill on the way. Oh, that explains why. Okay. Lady Letzia had then been summoned as an urgent replacement representative and sent to catch up with the carriage on her retainer's high beast. Though anyone with a brain can tell that Lady Georgine's lying. Knew it. She had worked tirelessly toward becoming the next Ob, trapping her enemies in various plots and sparing no effort to secure her position. If someone told me she was still obsessed with Ehrenfest, I would believe them in an instant. She was crazy vindictive. Yep. I had loved gathering information ever since... Okay, this is Justice's point of view. Okay. Ever since I was little, it was more or less a hobby of mine, and in my eyes, every piece of intel was of equal importance. Or equal worth. Some valued certain tidbits more than others, though. One man's trash is another man's treasure, as they say, and it was with this in mind that I made sure to collect even the most insignificant details. As it turned out, Lady Georgine hadn't agreed with my methods. Your information is imprecise and entirely useless, she had once said to me. It had been at that very moment that I lost all interest in sharing my information with her, and also my will to serve her. Wait, you were serving Lady Georgine at some point? Okay. That was surprising. Lady Georgine and I were in the same grade, and she had my big sister and mother both serving as her retainers. In the playroom, she had approached me and said, You are taking the scholar course, correct? As a man, you will not be able to serve me as an attendant. Right, that's an option. And in the end, I had decided to take the attendant course. My mother and sister were already serving Lady Georgine, and it seemed necessary for me to join them. Lady Georgine hadn't taken this very well, though. You are a traitor, Justice. I can no longer trust you, she had said. And from that point on, she had started treating me quite harshly. Wow. Oh, so essentially she had wanted you to take the scholar course, but when you didn't, she felt betrayed. Blee, blee, blee. I hadn't known at the time, but Lord Sylvester had been born not long before that, and my mother was going to be moved into his service instead. Lady Georgine viewed my decision to take the attendant course as a means to evade becoming her scholar and to serve her little brother instead. Now, who said that? She's the only one who assumed that. To be honest, I didn't care what she thought. I didn't want to serve either of them. Lady Georgine put on the pleasant airs of a fine noblewoman, but she had a storm of very intense emotions raging inside her and would go to any length to destroy her enemies. Lord Sylvester, on the other hand, had spent 3 years plagued with sickness, then suddenly turned into a complete hooligan who sprinted all over the place. 3 years with sickness. I wonder what that was. Let me know, guys. Neither person had any qualities that compelled me to serve them. Just as some tea, if you would. I understood Lord Ferdinand. Instead, the person whom I had chosen to serve, even at the cost of giving up my name, was Lord Ferdinand. He was a good lord who used my information well and gave me a fair amount of freedom. Lord Ferdinand, who had been spurned by Lady Veronica, the previous first wife, to the point that she had tried to eliminate him on more than one occasion. Of course, Lord Ferdinand had evaded each attempt on his life. Ironically, despite how much she despised him, it seemed reasonable to say that she was the very reason for his genius. After all, she had pretty much forced him to develop extreme endurance, caution, and diligence. Oh, definitely. It's because of her that he's gotten so good at what he does. So yeah, that's definitely ironic. Sergius, may I be taken to the kitchen, I asked. Sergius was one of the Arensbach attendants assigned to Lord Ferdinand. I also needed to use this opportunity to teach him which tea and whatever our lord preferred. It may take us some time to get them, he replied, but once the Starbine ceremony with Lady Detlinde is complete, we will be moved to the Ob's living quarters in the main building. That should make things much easier. Lord Ferdinand couldn't go to the Ob's chambers in the main building until he was married, so he was staying in a guest room for the time being. That much was normal, so I saw no reason to complain. The problem is, when will the Starbinding ceremony actually take place? We could say with all certainty that the announcement of the late Ob's death and the assignment of the next Archduke would take place during the next Spring Archduke Conference, but we didn't yet know whether the Starbinding ceremony would also be held there. That could be held that year, or could be held next year. We don't know. Lady Detlinde needed to prioritize dyeing the foundational magic with her mana and making it entirely hers. She won't be able to dye it while she's at the Royal Academy, though, and it's obvious that Lord Ferdinand's mana is stronger. The foundational magic was still dyed with the late Ob's Ehrenbach's... Oh, I just realized something. The Ob is supposed to be the only person who knows where the foundation magic is. Is he the only one who knows? Because if so, they don't know where their foundation's magic is. Oh boy, that's not good. What are they gonna do? Children had similar mana to their parents, so manipulating it wouldn't pose a significant problem, but once a couple married, they would start mixing mana and dyeing themselves. No, I don't want to hear it! I don't want to hear it! I don't want to hear it! The euphemisms! And each colors. This was problematic because of the likelihood that Lord Ferdinand's mana would repel the Obs, thereby making Lady Detlinde's task even more difficult. They would probably postpone the marriage until after the foundation had been dyed. This hallway is for servants, but it also serves as a shortcut to the kitchen, Sergius explained with a smile while leading the way. I memorized the path while listening to the conversations of the busily moving servants. My main job this winter were to form connections with nobles and gather intelligence. Lord Ferdinand had specifically told me to learn anything I could about Lady Georgine. Ob Arensbach's passing meant that the Archduke living space needed to be cleared for the next Archduke, and Lady Georgine was apparently in the process of moving her quarters. The servants were all running around, which made this the perfect opportunity for an infiltration mission. Of course, I would need to dedicate some time to my preparations first. I still needed to master the locals' accents for one thing. Most nobles sounded pretty similar to how they spoke, since they were all socialized together in the Royal Academy and during the Archduke Conference. But to mingle with the commoner servants, it was necessary to learn their way of speaking and the slang they used. The commoners here in Arensbach seemed to speak a bit differently from those in Ehrenfest's lower city, so I had to relearn how to talk. There were a few habits that were common to both regions, but for the most part, I would need to learn as much as I could from listening to the servants around me. Looks like the servants here have uniforms too. That sure is a pain. I wouldn't be able to do any infiltrating with that one. Although she hadn't come to meet us at the border, Lady Georgine had been there when we arrived at the castle. I did not expect you to come as well, Justice, she had said to me. And is Gudrun not with you? I got so few chances to see her, and I miss her ever so much. It was a warning that she knew about my female persona and would find me out the instant I attempted to cross-dress. Oh, so you can't do your Gudrun impression. Okay. That's not good. Working with Lady Georgine was something of a challenge, since she knew me from my days messing around in the Royal Academy. Yeah, you're going to have a harder time with this one, Justice. Or Eustachius, or however you pronounce the name. Incidentally, Lord Ferdinand, do you not need to practice the harpsichord? I asked while serving him tea. His internal dialogue hadn't escaped my notice. Each time we had stopped in an inn en route to Arensbach's castle, he had mumbled, "Surely there is another way." It seemed that he had never actually come up with an alternative, though. He had asked me several times for ideas, but I hadn't even attempted to think of any. As far as I was concerned, nothing could beat Lady Rosemine's harpsichord suggestion. Now that Ab Arensbach was dead, we needed a quick way to make allies, but Lord Ferdinand was all around terrible at dealing with people. He could complete tasks given to him to perfection, but he looked at things too logically and tended to leave emotion by the wayside. In contrast to his harsh character, his harpsichord playing was incredibly soft, and people had been smitten with his singing voice ever since he was a student. They would play an essential role in our aim to open the hearts of the Arensbach nobles. Women were bound to look at him more positively afterward, if not find themselves completely enraptured. Yes, that's what happened at the Ehrenfest concert. Oh my god. Oh, I can't wait till they find out that the trends that Ehrenfest has are not his. Oh, that's going to be fun to watch. Or fun to read. Lady Rosemine understands Lord Ferdinand real well. I chuckled to myself, which made Lord Ferdinand grimace. He was pretty averse to following Lady Rosemine's advice. I remember you being so graceful with the harpsichord, Lord Ferdinand, Sergius said. I would love to hear you play. As it turned out, Sergius had gone to the Royal Academy at around the same time as Lord Ferdinand. He was one of the attendants who had asked to support Lord Ferdinand when we arrived in Arensbach. And although I didn't fully trust him yet, I could see the respect and admiration in his eyes. So you might have a slight ally. Might. Sergius explained that there was some in Arensbach who knew how excellent Lord Ferdinand was and was enthusiastic about having him here to assist with work. Specifically, there were some higher-ups who considered certain duties too heavy to be entrusted to Lady Detlinde. The dream was for us to slowly get them on our side. As you are soon to be Lady Letsia's teacher, I think it would be productive for you to demonstrate your talent, Sergius continued. Perhaps you could play during the welcoming feast? Or should we arrange for you to play on some other day? Ferdinand gave a defeated sigh, having at last given up now that even Sergius was against him. I will play some harpsichord at the feast. Now leave me be. As you wish. His plan was to arrange the new song that Lady Rosemine had given him, and with those preliminary arrangements complete, we left Lord Ferdinand alone. Only his guard knight Eckert would be staying with him. As I put together my room and unpacked my luggage, the only thought running through my mind was how I could go about getting my hands on a servant's uniform. Sergius, allow me to wash up the teacups and such, I said. I shall join you. I cannot yet allow you to move around on your own, he replied. Though he was attending to Lord Ferdinand, he was also here to keep me under observation. I appreciate it. Memorizing directions is something of a weakness of mine. I got Sergius to carry the dishes while I picked up the heavier items like the teapot, and together we made our way through the servants' hallway toward the kitchen. I don't feel great about this, but you gotta do what you gotta do. I waited until we came across a servant who moved to the wall to let us pass, then purposely bumped into him, spilling some of the leftover tea and honey on his clothes in the process. Sorry, I exclaimed. That was entirely my fault. Think nothing of it, my lord, the servant replied. I will just have to wash my uniform. Indeed, Justice, Sergius added, you do not need to worry. The servant is at fault for not being careful enough. I shook my head with a grave expression. No, that won't do. In Ehrenfest, even nobles have to take responsibility for mistakes like this. I realize that I'm in Arensbach now, but turning a blind eye to it all, I just wouldn't sit right with me. Sergius, can you take this teapot for me? I need to go apologize to this man's superior. You know I cannot let you do that. Understandable. How about you if you accompany me there once we're done? Sergius paused for a moment, then heaved an annoyed sigh and said, very well. It was becoming even more apparent that he had been ordered not to leave me to my own devices. Because, yeah, Lady Georgine knows how he is. She knows that he can't be left alone because then he'll start to, look around, get information, stuff like that. I realize this is an inconvenience, I said, turning to the servant, but you'll need to come with us. I'll apologize to your superior and get you a new uniform. You can't be expected to work in that one. Naturally, a mere servant was in no position to talk back to a noble. He headed to the kitchen where Sergius and I washed up our teapot and cups. Then I pushed for the three of us to meet with the superior of the now cringing servant. There I explained the circumstances, apologized, and asked to be taken to where new uniforms were provided. There is no need for you, a noble, to go to such lengths for a servant, Sergius noted. I wouldn't be able to forgive myself otherwise, and Lord Ferdinand would have some choice words for me, I said, forcing my way through with a smile. I then apologized to the servant once again, paid for his new uniform, and oversaw him receiving it. Looks like they aren't checking names or faces. Means I'll just need some money and a noble to accompany me. After confirming the process for obtaining a new uniform, I waited several days, then met with Eckert and Lord Ferdinand. It was during our talk that I arranged for Sergius to be given a job of some sort that would give me time to work unobserved. I then changed the color of my hair, messed with my face, and dirtied my clothes enough that they resembled the servants' uniforms. Eckert, take this man to get a new uniform, Lord Ferdinand instructed. Yes, my lord. He's playing along. Of course he is. What am I saying? And so we went to the uniform room with a note from Lord Ferdinand. Eckert used the same excuses as I had a few days prior, handed over the necessary fee, then used the note to secure my new clothes. Ehrenfest nobles certainly are strange, the person in charge of the uniform said. Surely there is no need for you to be so concerned about servants. Eckert shook his head. We have a saint in Ehrenfest who grants compassion even to orphans. Our Lord would have harsh words for us if we were to treat the servants poorly. They sound very saintly indeed, the male remarked with a sympathetic smile without handing over the uniform. You have my utmost thanks. Now I must return to work, I said, separating from Eckert once I was in my uniform and making my way to the servants' hallway. From there, I headed to Lady Georgine's villa. It was time for some reconnaissance. Oh, be careful, Justice! Lady Georgine is probably not one to be trifled with. I mingled with the working servants and gathered some intelligence, then slipped into a storage room used only by servants and changed back into my attendant uniform. From there, I used wash-in to clean myself and remove the dye from my hair, then returned to Lord Ferdinand's room as if nothing had happened. Justice, where were you? Ah, Sergius, did Lord Ferdinand not tell you? He said that you had gone to the brewing room, but I did not see you there. We must have missed each other. I made some recovery potions and then went to the kitchen. My excuse wasn't wholly untrue. One of the kitchen servants was a gossipy woman who loved talking to anyone who would listen, so I had gone there to peel some potatofuls. She had given me a lot of useful information. After brushing off Sergius's questions, I presented some tea to Lord Ferdinand. Were you able to finish the Harspiel song? Yes, I intend to debut it tomorrow, he replied with a derisive smirk. He looked to be fairly confident in himself, so I assumed there was nothing to worry about. But he then placed a sound-blocking magic tool on the table, positioned it behind the teapot so that only I could see it. I took the magic tool while pretending to set down the sweet I was eating. Sergius, prepare a bath if you would, Lord Ferdinand said. I wish to take one before dinner. As you wish. The moment Sergius turned around, Lord Ferdinand muttered a report. It was much harder for us to converse in secret now that we were in Aaron's box, since we had even more eyes on us than expected. But the two of us and Eckert were the only ones in the room right now. We needed to make the most of what little time we had. It seems that people here don't have very high opinions of Ehrenfest, I said, preparing the bed and desk while I delivered my report so that it wouldn't be obvious that we were talking when Sergius returned. The general consensus is that we've been much too uncooperative, even though our own Lady Georgine is the first wife. People had a lot of sympathy for Lady Georgine, who had come from Ehrenfest, but we received practically no support since Lord Sylvester became the Archduke. But she received practically no support, okay. I thought it was unbecoming that, after receiving our very own saint with an abundance of mana, we had chosen to focus on climbing the rankings rather than helping those around us. I seem to recall Lady Veronica dedicating a large chunk of our budget to Aaron's box, and she had valued the connection between our duchies so dearly. Now I wonder who spread those rumors, I pondered aloud. I imagine Ehrenfest was simply a convenient scapegoat for Aaron's box discontent, Lord Ferdinand replied. Indeed. Moreover, it seems that Lady Georgine's faction contains many vassals from the late second wife. She was the mother of Aaron's box's successor and had on bad terms with the previous first wife from the very start, it seems, but treated Lady Georgine well when she came to be that third wife. Incidentally, after the second wife was executed and Arensbach lost his successors, the first wife's granddaughter had been adopted to serve as a successor instead. The second wife's faction had apparently moved wholesale to support Lady Georgine. Their reason for choosing Lady Georgine was in part because they opposed the first wife, but also because they thought Lady Letsia was much too young. The mana shortage only made things worse. A duchy had already lost Archduke candidates and were struggling to supply mana to its foundation when the priest tasked with filling his chalices were suddenly moved to the sovereignty, creating another dramatic shortage for them to wrestle with. And on top of all that, Arensbach was entrusted with managing old work stock, meaning it had even more land to oversee. Not to mention that as its king did not own the Grugenscheid, he was unable to redraw the borders. Arensbach was stuck managing land that they didn't even own, and the resulting burden was immense. The first wife prioritized most things above pouring resources into old work stock, I continued. In the people's eyes, what mattered most was keeping Arensbach alive. And then, in the midst of all this, Lady Georgine somehow acquired chalices amounted to be used for work stock. She thus earned the respect of the second wife's faction and the people of old work stock. I see. Those must have been the outside chalices Bezin once brought to the temple for Nissa, crossing his arms with a heavy sigh. That's where they came to. Okay. I watched him out of the corner of my eye while making sure that nothing dangerous had been slipped into his bed. The people of Arensbach see Ehrenfest as cruel for ignoring Lady Georgine's pleas, especially when our adoption of the Saint of Ehrenfest gave us so much extra leeway. Of course, we never actually had any leeway, but for the people living in old work stock, their very lives depended on those chalices. It is unreasonable for Arensbach to rely on Ehrenfest of all duchies, but I suppose it was inevitable that they would react poorly to losing their lifeline on such short notice. Georgine's support here is larger than I expected, Lord Ferdinand replied, furrowing his brow as he fell into thought. Lady Georgine has the support of the second wife's faction and those from Workstock, and of course, neither she nor those backing her support. Lady Letsia being raised as the next Ob, many in the villa consider it a problem that Lady Letsia will one day become the Archduchess. They even say that there's no need for her to be trained as a successor when they already have Lady Detlinde. I got the impression that the king's decree and the Ob's dying wish are still relatively unknown here, I explained. These are my most important findings. I'll wait for another opportunity to inform you who is on good terms with whom and which vegetables are the freshest. It was then that Lord Ferdinand stood up, a clear indication that Sergius had finished preparing the bath. Justice, I entrust these magic tools to you, he said. Understood. Lord Ferdinand played the Harpspiel during the feast, expressing his gratitude for having been welcomed into Arensbach. He started with several songs that were well known among Jürgensmith, then transitioned into several he had received from Lady Rosamund and arranged. The most recent told a tale of nostalgia for one's distant homeland. Just as Lady Rosamund had anticipated, the women were enraptured by Lord Ferdinand's singing voice and welcomed him with open arms. They surrounded him the moment he finished playing and started bombarding him with invitations for winter socializing. Our future here in Arensbach would depend on how many allies we could make, so it was crucial that he attend as many gatherings as possible. Your Harpspiel playing is as wonderful as ever, Lord Ferdinand, one woman said. Could it be true your dinner skills are just as sharp? No, time has certainly dulled them, Lord Ferdinand replied. I was able to beat Heischitz with ease back in the Royal Academy, but my recent battle against him was much too close. Lord Heischitz, a knight exclaimed, he's still on active duty in Dunkelfunker, so you can't have been too rusty. Ooh. Yeah, he can't have been too rusty if he's able to still beat Heischitz, who has been on duty the whole time. Lord Ferdinand gave an invincible grin. All the while, all this talk about his Harpspiel and dinner talents was starting to win over even those who had looked down on him as a motherless archduke candidate from the temple of a bottom-ranking duchy. Oh ho ho, Lady Detlinde let a proud chuckle from beside Lord Ferdinand. He is my fiancé after all. His smile broadened. Oh, I hate her! Hate her so much! Upon hearing Lady Detlinde's smug declaration, Lord Ferdinand had immediately donned the fake smile he wore when presented with someone he loathed. I discreetly made sure I had some stomach pain medicine on hand. Oh, yeah, he's gonna need that. But, yeah, I have to agree with the person who was saying that his skills couldn't have been too rusty, considering, yeah, Heischitz has been on duty the whole time and probably been improving his skills as well, and Ferdinand still managed to beat him. Yep. He couldn't have been too rusty. But yeah, I know it's not Detlinde's fault that, Ferdinand was supposed to marry her. It's not her choice, but still, yeah. The start of a busy winter. You have quite a murderous expression, Cornelius. He will notice if you do not contain yourself at least somewhat, Lenore quietly warned, as she leaned against me, smiling sweetly. I exhaled and stopped glaring at Gabe Gerlach. We were in the busy grand hall, and the Feast of Beginnings was soon to start. It was my first time participating in winter socializing, wearing the clothes of a proper adult knight. In truth, I wanted to kick the Geeb in his smug face here and now. I don't blame you. I'd do it too. Do it. Do it. Do it during the purge. Come on. Get the chance. Ask your dad if you can do that during the purge. And you have to they go to execute him. Do it. Now, that wasn't a wise move. Things weren't like before when we had possessed agonizing little evidence to justify his imprisonment. Now we had all that we needed. Giving him cause for concern would only complicate things, so I did my best to force a smile. I'll be more careful, I reassured Lenore. I just can't help but tense up when I think about how it's finally time. One certainly cannot help feeling restless. The purge was on the horizon, and although the knights who knew this appeared calm at first glance, there was a particular sharpness in their eyes. Meanwhile, the nobles of the Veronica faction were having rousing discussions about Lady Georgina's visit and Lord Ferdinand leaving for Arensbach. There was much to pay attention to, such as whether all the key suspects were here or whether they had caught on to our plans. Once again, Abiglade, the god of life, has hidden away Gadul, the goddess of earth, ab Arensbach announced, beginning the feast. We must all pray for the return of spring. Ehrenfest went on to explain that Lord Ferdinand had departed for Arensbach ahead of the schedule, with Hartmut having been assigned as the high priest in his place to support Rosemite in the temple. Once he had delivered the news, it was time for the baptisms and debuts. Lord Melkor had been baptized in the spring and would be participating in this winter's debut. He had been practicing the Harpspiel of Rosemite since he enjoyed her playing. Rosemite and Hartmut, the High Bishop and the new High Priest, respectively, were already on the stage preparing for the baptism ceremony. Hartmut helped Rosemite up onto a small platform, after which she began to speak. We welcome the new children of Ehrenfest. Using a magic tool to amplify her voice, Rosemite performed the greeting and told the relevant biblical tales. Duties that had previously fallen to Lord Ferdinand. She spoke of the gods in her still youthful voice, keeping the Bible closed all the while, in part to deceive those who knew it had been tampered with. There has been a noticeable change in how Lady Rosemite carries herself. There's a newfound sharpness in her eyes, Lenore remarked. She's looking especially troubled lately, so much so that Riarda has started to worry. She looks troubled because she's still so upset about Lord Ferdinand no longer being here, I replied. There had been a dramatic change in Rosemite's relationship with Lord Ferdinand on the day that his departure was settled. The two had gone into his hidden room, and since then Rosemite had begun expressing her fondness for Lord Ferdinand without hesitation. Their sudden closeness had been apparent in their conversations, too. It was our job as guards to stick close to our lord or lady at all times so we could gauge such changes with ease. They had also given each other gifts, although this wasn't unusual in itself, considering the circumstances. One would normally give a present of some sort when someone close to them was being married into another duchy, and the one leaving would give away what they would not be bringing with them. The unusual part had been the actual farewell gift, a meal at the Italian restaurant. It had confused me at first, but after Rosemite framed it as her thanking both Lord Ferdinand and her retainers for all their hard work, it had seemed a lot less strange. And what happened next was even harder to understand. Rosemite and Lord Ferdinand had been gifted each other Faystone charms, each having wanted to surprise the other. Charms on that level were given only by the most overprotective of parents, but there had been nothing that could stop Hartmut after Rosemite had asked for his assistance. Had they been normal charms, I wouldn't be so concerned, but although none of us wanted the political marriage, I found it very problematic that Lord Ferdinand had given Rosemite Faystones of much greater quality and with so much more mana than the one he had given his fiancée. The gift should have gone to Lady Detlinde instead, and I couldn't have been the only person who thought so. Had Rosemite been of age instead of a student, everyone would have interpreted the offering as an outright marriage proposal. Yeah, if she had been a little older, yes, that would have been the case, but we'll see. Wait, what's the difference between Ditlinde's and Rosemite's age at this point? Is there how big of an age difference? Because I'm assuming it's 2 years or something. I truly did not expect Lord Ferdinand to give such a charm in the form of a hair ornament, Lenore said. It caught me off guard, to say the least. Eckert said that it was nothing to be surprised about, since Lord Ferdinand has given her charms so many times before, and that it wasn't our place to comment on their gifts, but still, it really doesn't make sense, does it? Rosemite had received 5 rainbow face stones connected to a hair stick via mana chains. Eckert, Justice, and Hartmut had been the only ones not shocked to see it. All the other retainers had stared at it with wide eyes. Rosemite had looked to be surprised as well, but the way she had muttered about being beaten 5-fold suggested that it was 5 for a different reason than the rest of us. Still, does Lord Wolfrid really have nothing to... Hold on. Have nothing to say about Rosemite wearing so many charms from Lord Ferdinand, I asked. Once a pair got married and started mixing their mana quality will grow to be similar. Their mana would then influence that of their children, so most husbands would be vehemently against their wives wearing something containing the mana of a man other than her father. It certainly wasn't something I would be able to tolerate were Lenore to be put on a charm from another man, guardian or otherwise. I would ask her to remove it immediately. Perhaps he sees that charm as being no different from the others, Lenore ventured. I imagine that he sees Lord Ferdinand protecting Lady Rosamund as completely natural. Not to mention, he is too young for his mana sensing to have developed, so he may not fully understand his place as her fiancé. Once he grows old enough to take issue with the hair stick, perhaps he will choose to give her a face done of his own? Possibly. She then placed a hand on to her chest and a bright smile spread across her lips. One lovely aspect of being a woman is having the charms and face stones you receive from your fathers to slowly be replaced by those from your future husband. Beneath her shirt was the proposal face stone that I had given her. All of a sudden I was struck with the urge to make her even more charms. Not to mention, Lenore continued, Lady Rosamund really does need that charm for her own safety. As her retainers, we should rejoice that Lord Wolfrid has not yet found it repulsive. I never would have thought her capable of performing such an advanced blessing. Lenore was referring to the blessing that Rosamund had given before Lord Ferdinand departed. According to Rosamund herself, she had channeled the joy of receiving an estate to turn into a library directly into her prayer. Rather than unleashing her raw mana with the standard praise be to the gods, however, she had used her staff to give a circle blessing of all elements. This magic circle Rosamund had used was only known to high bishops, meaning that not even Lord Ferdinand had seen it before. It had shone with the divine colors of each god as she chanted their names, and finally produced a rainbow blessing that had rained down on its recipients. The sight had been so dreamlike that I had let out an awed breath despite myself, though I was far from the only one who had been so amazed. It had been my first time seeing a blessing that included every single element before then. My only exposure to them had been through books that described successful examples. There was normally no need to use such blessings, and in truth, I had always assumed that life would prevent them from functioning entirely. Anyone who witnessed such a tremendous sight would find it hard to deny that Rosamund was a saint. In the heat of the moment, even I had been convinced that she was the real deal. Hartman had been so over the moon about it all that dealing with him had been a complete pain. It still was, in fact, since he was still just excited. It really was unthinkable, Lenore continued. I do not think there is a single duchy that does not want the state of Ehrenfest for itself. The Ob told us not to mention the prayer to anyone, but Lady Rosamund has developed a habit of getting emotional and then channeling those emotions into a prayer. We do not know when she might do it again, nor can we say who might target her as a result. Rosamund had collapsed more than enough times at the Royal Academy due to containing her emotions and not releasing them through prayer. As I understood it, she had stopped passing out now that her remaining mana clumps had dissolved in the Darif, but her tendency to give impromptu blessings was unchanged. When you put it like that, it isn't too surprising that Lord Ferdinand would give Rosamund a rainbow charm and attempt to bind her in Ehrenfest with the library, I said. I can barely handle my worry when she leaves for the Royal Academy without me. I was worried about how things would go down with the children of the former Veronica faction, and the fact that it was impossible to predict what Rosamund might do just makes it even more terrifying. There was a chance that she might wreak havoc with interduchy relations, but I was even more concerned about the royal family, given how many times they had gotten involved with Rosamund already. I saw no reason to believe that they wouldn't continue this trend this year. I'll remain on full alert at the Royal Academy, Lenore assured me. You must do as Lord Eckert said, right, Cornelius? Focus your efforts on that if you would. Yeah, I was reminded just how superior Eckert is all over again. All in all, I consider myself a pretty capable guard knight. I had gotten better at my studies by tutoring Angelica, increased my mana through Rosamund's compression method, endured training with grandfather, secured a role in the sword dance, and performed well enough at the Royal Academy to have been recognized as an honor student each year I was in attendance. Compared to Eckert, though, I still had a long way to go. Confirming the presence of poison is the work of attendants, not guard knights, Lenore noted. Still, it's hard to deny that a guard knight needs to know how to protect their lord or lady in every way. Plus, if you think about it, Angelica has speed, Daniel has mana control, Judith has range, and you have strategies and Phoebe's knowledge. I'm the only one without a specialty. Someone more generous might have described me as a jack of all trades, but I clearly lost to the others in every way. I didn't want to be at the very bottom. There's no reason to feel so down, Lenore said, consoling me with a gentle smile. If you ask me, being competent in all areas makes you rather strong. You have conquered your weaknesses such that none remain. Is that not wondrous? Furthermore, you have more mana than any of us. Her praise was genuinely relieving to hear. Lenore, how about we start cleaning our estate for when spring comes? Just as Lord Ferdinand gave his estate to Rosamund, Eckert gave his to me, I said. Eckert had once lived there with his late wife, Marie, but his move to Ahrensbach meant he no longer had much use for it. In return, we've set aside a room in which to store Eckert's most precious belongings. Eckert had apparently been told to leave the items that were truly important to him here in Ehrenfest until the situation in Ahrensbach was clearer. He had thus moved everything that reminded him of Heidemarie into one room. I still remembered the way he had regretfully stroked the door before locking it. Oh, also, I continued, Lamprecht said that furniture is best chosen by the wife since she spends much time in the estate, but... Cornelius, has Lady Elvira not taught you to only invite your partners to your estate after formally proposing to them, Lenore asked. I will tell on you.
Lenore, don't you dare! Don't you dare!
Her lips were pursed in a show of dissatisfaction, but there was a mischievous light in her indigo eyes that proved she was only teasing me. After your graduation ceremony, then. I'm looking forward to it, Lenore giggled. Lord Melkor's performance began soon after Rosamund listened with a nostalgic smile as he played a song to the goddess of spring which she had composed and Lord Ferdinand arranged. The baptism and debut concluded without incident, and much to my disappointment. I had hoped that someone would make a fuss about Rosamund not opening the Bible, declaring that it must be a fake, but for some reason nobody had even tried, because they knew that if they did, it would kind of be suspicious. So of course they're not going to say anything. After the Feast of Beginnings, Rosamund made her way to the playroom, which she would be visiting every single day until she needed to leave for the Royal Academy. The newly baptized children all greeted her, and she immediately began looking into how things were being run. She was busy motivating the children with sweets, getting instructions to Lord Melkor's retainers, and going over the year's study plans of Muritz on top of doing her own studying. Lord Wolford was taking the lead in playing with the children. He was good at making the games exciting and then seamlessly transitioning into studying. As for Lord Melkor, he didn't seem to consider himself much of an Archduke candidate yet, and was simply taking this opportunity to play with his brother. He would presumably become more self-aware when it came time for him to join his siblings in the Royal Academy. Lady Charlotte was working alongside Lady Florencia to house the children of those guilty by association, so she hadn't appeared in the playroom since her initial greeting. It seemed that she had taken Rosamund's advice and planned to use the orphanage as a template for how to raise them. I had heard that she was deviating from the original plan by combining individual rooms into shared spaces where children could lick each other's wounds and support each other as fellow victims. Okay. That's kind of odd how to say that. Nicholas would be going there too. I looked at my half-brother Nicholas, who was glancing in my direction as I stood guard behind Rosamund. His mother, Trudelaide, had given her name to Lady Veronica and was currently leaning more on Lady Georgine's side. Oh boy. How is that going to work? Are they going to get rid of her too? According to Mother, Trudelaide had been Lady Veronica's attendant before marrying Father. She despised Lord Ferdinand, whom she saw as a source of her lady's pain. Disliked Rosamund, whom she believed to be a former commoner due to circulating rumors, and was displeased with the Archduke who had imprisoned her lady in the ivory tower. Our estate had accumulated a great deal of information due to it being Rosamund's home and Father being the Archduke's guard knight. Trudelaide was on the chopping block for leaking that information to nobles who had given their name to Lady Georgine. She wouldn't be executed, but she would end up imprisoned and would continuously have her mana stolen, as I understood it. Cornelius, there's a dark look on your face, Rosamund said. Did something happen? No, Lady Rosamund. As long as Nicholas accepted his mother's crimes and sought to be spared, Father would doubtless take him home and raise him. Personally, though, I wanted to keep him as far away from us as possible. There was no knowing what ideas Trudelaide had put into his head, and we couldn't yet confirm that he didn't hold some kind of grudge against Rosamund. Huh. I'm pretty overprotective too, huh? Yeah, you are. And for rightly so, cried my dad. Uh-oh. The purge! The day that for Lady Rosamund to leave for the Royal Academy came soon enough. Lord Wolfrey was already in the teleportation circle, having finished his preparations ahead of time. Ehrenfest was watching him quietly. Wolfried, I'm leaving the children of the former Veronica faction in your hands. Yes, Father, I will save as many of them as I can. It was agreed that no students would return home from the Royal Academy this year, so as to avoid the purge being interrupted or any information leaking. They would only be informed of everything when the Archducal family arrived for the Interduchy tournament, so everybody has to stay home, or stay there. As soon as Lord Wolfrey was gone, it was Rosamund's turn. Her luggage was first placed on the circle and teleported. The plan was for her to spread printed stories in the Royal Academy, so she was bringing a great many books with her. There was no hiding the broad smile across her face as she gazed at the boxes that were being stored in. Her expression was the complete antithesis of the solemn resolve that her brother had departed with. While her luggage was being sent over, Rosamund exchanged brief words with all those who had come to see her off. This was my first time of experiencing it since I had always left for the Royal Academy before her. I entrust you with the winter playroom, she said to Melkor, who was feeling down about being the only one left in the northern building. She then turned to Lady Charlotte and said, "See you tomorrow." Hartman wouldn't stop giving air to his worries now that Rosamund had lost her most trusted ally, so it came as a relief to see that she and the Obbs of the children were getting along like proper siblings. Hartman was just overthinking things. Rosamund had plenty of people supporting her. "You may leave this side of things to us," Lady Florencia said with a smile, then peered down at Rosamund with a slight concern. "Take great care, Rosamund. The dream has impacted your health and mana in ways that you surely cannot predict." "I will," Rosamund replied, then turned to face grandfather. "I know you have many plans for the winter, but do not overexert yourself." The purge wasn't due to take place until after the Lord of Winter hunt, as we didn't want to sacrifice any of our manpower right before such a critical time of year. The fact that both events were happening back-to-back would already place a heavy burden on the knights, and the struggle was only exacerbated by us having lost Lord Ferdinand and Eckert, two of our strongest fighters. Grandfather was participating in the hunt and the purge this year to help fill the holes that remained. "Don't you worry, you can count on me," Grandfather replied. He was so glad to be in Rosamund's thoughts that I wanted to openly insist that there really was nothing for her to worry about. Back when we had been playing the purge, he had seemed especially eager, even going as far as to declare, "I shall go first," and said, "And we shall prioritize the purge before anything else. All we need to defeat the Lord of Winter are a few rejuvenation potions." Of course, the knight's order had swiftly refused on both fronts. "Rosamund, don't get too carried away over there," Father said. "I look forward to you bringing back more tales about blossoming romance," Brother added. After speaking to our parents, Rosamund turned to us, her retainers. "Daniel, Angelica, Cornelius, I realize it would not be easy for you to visit the temple on top of your usual nightly duties, but I trust you to handle it all without issue," she said. "Yes, milady." This was going to be my first time carrying out winter duties. I was nervous for all sorts of reasons, but Daniel had mentioned there being sweets that were only served in the winter, so I was a little enthusiastic as well.
Oh no, are they going to find out about the Perus and then go after them and there'll be any for the commoners? Don't do that to us.
Daniel won't be happy about that either, because then the orphans won't get to have them and they'll be sad. "Hartman, I entrust the dedication ritual and the orphanage to you," Rosamund said. "Are you sure you will be okay without me?" You may count on me," Hartman replied. "Please focus on enjoying student life at the Royal Academy. If anything happens in the orphanage, I will inform you by letter." "I thank you ever so much. I shall be off then. I will deliver your letter to Clarissa without fail," Rosamund said, punctuating this promise with a serious glance at Hartman. He needed to inform Clarissa that he had entered the temple. I was fairly confident that she would pay the news no mind and come to Ehrenfest anyway, but not everyone shared my view. As the conversation approached its natural conclusion, Ob Ehrenfest stepped forward. "Rosamund, you may end up meeting with Prince Hildebrand again this year," he said. "I want you to avoid going to the library, at least until socializing season, that is." "Understood," Rosamund replied with a smile and a nod. It was a surprising reaction for someone who had proven her obsession time and time again. Even the Ob was taken aback. "I intend to go to Raymond and Professor Herscher's laboratory when not supplying mana to Schwartz and Weiss. I will need to make magic tools for my library after all. We can also have Raymond deliver letters to Ferdinand for us since Raymond is his disciple. So yeah, understood." Rosamund waved at us with a smile, then stepped on into the teleporter with Riarda. They vanished a moment later, and with that, all of us who had gathered to see Rosamund off started to disperse. We all left the teleportation room and headed back to our own rooms. I was due to attend a meeting with my fellow retainers about our upcoming plans. Hartman had been obstinate about not wanting Rosamund to hear any of the gruesome details, so we had scheduled it for after her departure. We borrowed a random meeting room and then delved straight into our discussion. There was a lot we had to do. "So, allow me to summarize," Daniel said. "First, we gather intelligence during winter socializing. Second, we move to the temple for the dedication ritual. A Lord of Winter hunt should take place during or directly after the dedication ritual, and the purge immediately after that. Finally, we have the cleanup and the running of the orphanage. Now that I say it all out loud, we really have our work cut out for us." I noted our schedules were full to bursting, but we were still prepared to play the role of Blue Priest to ensure that Rosamund could spend an entire term at the Royal Academy. Hartman had rested a hand on my shoulder and said, "As you're her older brother, offering up a little mana is nothing when it means letting her live properly as a student, no?" He really was ruthless when it was for Rosamund's sake. "Still, why are Guy Gerlach and the others dedicating their whole lives to Lady Georgine?" I asked, partly out of annoyance that they were making my winter so busy. The land they rule is here in Ehrenfest, so what's the point of them being so loyal to someone in Ahrensbach? Hartman shrugged. "They clearly have a reason. Just imagine Lady Rosamund being in Lady Georgine's position and you being in Guy Gerlach's. Both sides only want to please their lady. It's so simple as that." Though we'll absolutely have to eliminate them since their dedication borders on insanity, and that's dangerous to Lady Rosemine. Huh, so you're aware that your own obsession borders on insanity too, then. That's news to me. Out of time. How much more do I have? Okay, that's an hour. Okay. I'll do the rest in the next video. I will see you guys in the next one. The next 5 for that, it'll be the next volume. Get into volume 22, everybody! See y'all next time.